All right, so let's bring up Laura Fryer. The latest video came out about yesterday, I think. And this one is called Game Exclusivity Grind.
And you? Will you continue down that river?
AAA gaming has been struggling. Failed games, studio closures, team layoffs, and what feels like a never-ending series of bad decisions by out-of-touch executives. So why is this happening? Why are these executives unable to ship successful games? And why are some studios like Larian and Saber Interactive rising to the top? There are many reasons, but because
they make a game. They're making the games they want to make. And the other people are not making games they want to make. They're making games that they're told to make, and they have no passion in them.
Most things, it's complicated. For context, I've been in the trenches and I've been an executive. When I joined Microsoft, I worked in product support. I took phone calls from customers on games like Flight Sim, and I eventually became the product lead on one of the greatest software failures of all time.
During his first keynote at the Consumer Electronics Show in Vegas, Bill Gates announces
Microsoft Bob. Do you guys remember that? Do you guys remember that?
Microsoft Bob for Windows.
Fast forward years later, and I was asked to build a product team to create an augmented reality headset. The project was codenamed Orion, and it was announced in September of 2024. Orion was easily the most complicated project.
You guys ever hear about Orion? Brand new. Yet nobody's heard of it.
I've ever worked on. I've experienced the challenges at every level, and I can tell you, it is easy to criticize a leader.
I knew about it.
Until you are one. As Mike Tyson once said, everyone's got a plan until they get punched.
He's got his work cut out with Mike Tyson.
That's it.
The right hand. I doubt if he'll be able to get up from this.
Leading a game studio or a multi-billion-dollar AR project is a stressful, crazy job with high expectations and only a handful of people that can understand what it's like. There are very few people who can advise you.
That's where VR and AR are going to take off. When they can make glasses just like that or contact lenses or anything like that, that's when it's going to take off.
You spend most days mired in problems that you have no direct experience in solving. An executive can't be an expert in all fields. With games, for example, you can't be a great programmer and producer and artist and sound designer and composer. With the AR product, it's even more complex. You have all of the creative aspects of content for a new platform, partnered with crazy amounts of unsolved research problems. Now you're adding in researchers and engineers and optics, physics.
You can't do everything, right? As a person that does my YouTube channel, I'm the one-man band, and people want me to do certain things. I only have a certain amount of time to do stuff, you know what I mean? So you need a team. And that's why when you have a team, there's a lot more chefs in the kitchen to make stuff, right? That's why indie developers, when they make their game, they don't have to go through 10 rings. They're just a small team doing their stuff. And it's more passionate and they're more in tune of what they're doing, right? Where you have big companies like Ubisoft and there's tens of thousands of people working on a video game. There's so many chefs in the kitchen and nobody knows. Let's put this in a scenario, right? Or analogy. When you guys were in high school, okay, and you got to high school and you're a freshman, right? Did you know everybody in the high school, right? Some of you might have went to schools with thousands of kids that you will probably never know 99% of them. You only know your small little group that you had, okay? That's what it's like working at a big organization like Ubisoft, right? There's tens of thousands of employees, and you don't know 99% of them. You only know the team that you're working with in that little area. That's it, right? So there's a lot of chefs in the kitchen. A lot of people don't know, and it's this synchronization between the teams. You know what I mean?
Physics, silicon, mechanical engineering, electrical engineering, industrial design. It's obvious you can't be an expert in all of these fields. And this is where the challenge comes in, because that means you have to have a whole bunch of people helping to build the product. And of course, people have their own priorities, which influence their thinking and their feedback. So the job ends up largely being about people, about understanding everyone around you, their strengths, their priorities, their needs, and then factoring all of that information when you need to make a decision.
Which means upper management has to be on the ball, man. Upper management, all these people that run these companies is why most of these games fail. It's not because of the devs, right? The devs make their job that they're told to make. It's the upper management juggling all of these departments that have no communication. And this is why most businesses fail, because of management, not because of the workers.
About how the product moves forward. And this is just talking about the product team. The same is true for everyone around you, like the publishers or investors, or in the case of a studio like BioWare, their parent company, Electronic Arts. For every game, there is a collection of people that can impact it, because whoever is paying for the game gets a say. Look, It's not easy to navigate all of those issues, and I empathize with gaming executives and the challenge they face. At the same time, I don't feel sorry for them. They should be criticized for destroying amazing gaming franchises. They chose to lead, they get paid well to lead, and they
$22 million total compensation. He makes $11,000 hourly average.
Should be held accountable for their actions. Gamers are right in voting with their wallets, and it's starting to make a difference. It's rewarding the games that are fun, and it's bringing some much-needed accountability to the games industry. As a simple example, look at what's happening with Ubisoft. According to this article, Ubisoft will investigate how to be better and more player-centric. This is a positive sign of change.
Sure, it's a very positive sign of change, but it's also, they were so outside of reality that they got away from what grew the company. As we talked about earlier today, right? All of these companies forget how they became this multi-million, billion, trillion-dollar company. They think miraculously it happened because it just happens when they make a product. You made a product, I sold a product. No, they forgot how they got there, and how they got there was from us, the consumers, the people that liked their products and paid for the things.
But these are just words. We need to see action. As a counterexample, let's look at Larian. They are laser focused on the audience because they care about their game, their players, and to be honest, they have to be. Sven knows that one failed game can cost them their studio. They don't have the money of an Xbox or Ubisoft covering their failures. One or two failed games from an independent developer can be...
Make a game, sell a game. That game makes it, then you can fund your next game. That is your driving factor. Your driving factor is your passionate gamers making games for gamers. And if you make a good game, then that game will go on and sell. And when it sells, then you can make your next game. How do we have all these franchises? It's amazing, right?
The end of the studio. This is the reality, and reality creates accountability.
What don't you want the industry to take away from the story of Baldur's Gate 3?
You need to make sure you have enough fuel to do it.
Yeah.
That's probably the biggest one. I mean, like, we had reserve fuel based on the success of the original Sin 2.
Imagine that. He just said it. You have to have enough fuel. And we had enough fuel because of our success of our last game.
To engage with this.
Why can No Man's Sky come out with update after update after update after update 8 years later without charging 1 cent for their game? Because they made so much money when it originally launched, and their team is small, and they know what they can do, and they're passionate about what they can do. It came out bad, but they fixed it. They fixed it over the last 8 years. Okay? And they can continue funding that game based on their success. And every time someone sees it, they go out and they buy that game again. Or someone new buys that game for that price of $40 or $50 or $60.
Every executive in an independent developer has to worry about money because they have to take care of their team. Naturally, this creates accountability. This responsibility to their team naturally helps keep them from overscoping their game. When a new feature is discussed, it's always within the context of what they can do within the time frame and budget.
We upscaled our ambitions when we saw the success in early access.
Right.
So we would have not done that if we would have seen that early access wasn't as successful. So
Yeah.
I think the most important lesson for us is how important dashboarding is, so you can actually see your fuel meter, so you don't run out of money and you don't get into trouble.
For independent studios, scoping is survival. Contrast that with Xbox. When I was working on Gears 2, the entire team, Epic and Xbox, agreed that we were going to ship the game in holiday of 2008. This meant we had to be very careful with what features we added. You would think that since that decision...
This is what I talk about all the time, about when you make a game, like a Gears. She's talking about Gears, so let's talk about Gears, right? So Gears came out, and that was the bar set for Gears. So now Gear 2 came out, and they had to at least match the bar and then put extra features in just to go just above. You don't have to outdo yourself like this and put so many features in. You just got to put a couple of features in to make it better than the last one.
It had been made and everybody was aligned on the goal that it would be easy to manage people to a date. But it turns out it didn't work that way. It was a daily battle to avoid feature creep.
It never ends.
You see, once you have a hit title in a big team like the X.
Thank you, Mr. Luke. Mr. Luke says, don't forget to hit that like the live stream, guys. Appreciate that very much if you hit that like button.
Xbox, suddenly everybody wants to be involved. Everybody wants to put their mark on the game.
Of course.
They want to have a say. It's a weird dynamic because on some titles like Pinball Arcade, you have the opposite problem. It sometimes feels like you're begging management to pay attention so you can properly support it. The team was under a lot of pressure from management on Gears 1, but after it was a hit, it increased, and the feature suggestions were flying. In order to manage...
Of course, because nobody wants to get on board. I made this example last week, right? Everyone's giving shit to Microsoft now because what they're trying to do in the video game industry with Game Pass and cloud gaming and putting their games everywhere. Everybody thinks that that's the outsider. Nobody likes being outcasted or be the first one to do it. But if it works... everybody else will fall right in line and be like the same thing. Same with the Battle Royale, right? PUBG did the Battle Royale. It was the first PUBG was the first Battle Royale to really blow up, okay? And now everyone made a Battle Royale. No one wanted to take the plunge first. They wanted to make sure it worked properly, and then everyone else started changing their games to fit the narrative of what it was.
This, Rod and I created a simple messaging plan. We decided to add date to the feature list. At that time, there was a section every presentation that we gave to Xbox executives that included your priority feature list. And what we did is we put date at the top of that list. Well, that was not a popular decision. Executives didn't like it. They didn't feel like talking about date was inspirational enough. And every time they would throw out a new feature, I would say the same thing. We can do anything. We can add that feature and miss the holiday. We can cut features. We can even look at finding people to add to the project.
You could make anything happen, but you have to have the money to throw at it.
Maybe from other game teams here at Microsoft. There are many options, but it's all about trade-offs. This was true. It was the reality. But sometimes telling the truth can have consequences. It can impact your career. Remember, in 2007, we had a culture shift in Xbox. I would describe it as moving more towards patronage and a lot less meritocracy. It takes courage in that environment to push back. It can get dangerous because the feedback loop can shut down. Now, all of a sudden, all the leaders are just keeping their heads.
Another perfect example, because she just showed the guy who the Xbox One when it came out, and they wanted to make it a set-top box, right? The set-top box, they went out there, they tried it, and it bombed miserably, and no one followed suit. But now look at the industry, right? Without saying it's a set-top box, all the consoles that you have, you can watch Netflix and YouTube and Paramount and all these other Hulu. You can watch all this stuff on the set-top box, but they're just not calling it a set-top box, right? No one got behind it, but everyone got behind it.
Down to survive.
What's a set-top? The thing you put on top of your, like the box that you used to put on top of your television set? That's what it was called, a set-top box. Because that's where all your cable and stuff was.
And we can see how that culture change impacted Xbox, because we all saw the Xbox One launch.
Xbox, watch TV.
You said television. We wanted to hear video games.
We're all in the green room, and as each person would get off stage, you know, the execs in the room would ask what the pulse is on social, and it was not good.
This is not going well. This is not going well at all.
No, it didn't go well at all.
We were surprised by the $100 difference. You know, then it's like, that's a pretty big headwind to come back from.
PlayStation 4 was $399. Xbox One was $499. Death's door.
You have essentially the same hardware, but one device is $100 cheaper. Cool. I'm going to go with that one.
Which is a weird statement to say just one generation later. because now everybody else wants to pay for the more expensive box. Huh. That is strange. All of these other people that don't want to save money anymore. Interesting. Yeah. Look, mandatory online check. No gaming if offline for 24 hours. Lending game restriction. Selling games restriction. Used games restriction. Mandatory camera. And gold $60 require for Netflix. Compared to what PlayStation was, no online check, no 24-hour suicide check, no restriction on lending, no restriction on selling, no restriction on used games, no mandatory camera, no extra charge for Netflix, right? It's amazing how much change has happened now, right?
And that's where they lost.
When I see the clips from the Xbox documentary, it's clear to me that these people were living in an alternate reality. And when that bubble finally burst, it was heartbreaking. It was devastating to them.
It was a dark, 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 dark moment for us, and very, very, very painful.
The Xbox patronage culture change led to inert executives. They focus on looking good in the short term in their little corner of the world. It's not their money. If the console fails, oh well. If their game fails, it's not a problem for them. I mean, look at Don Matrick himself. I'm sure that when he left Microsoft, he was salty that he wasn't running all of Xbox anymore, but it certainly didn't impact him financially.
Right. $50 million welcome from Zynga laid bared.
And this is why I don't have a hard time imagining what's happening with Ubisoft or the failure of Concord. I think about it in the context of the Xbox One. Because what you're seeing is bad decisions gaining momentum. Poor culture creates a broken feedback loop.
Yeah, nobody told them. Bunch of yes men, right? Bunch of people that said, oh, yeah, you're good. Yeah, everyone was going to love that. And no one actually said anything to them saying, hey, you shouldn't do this.
And this is where bad ideas go to flourish. It's easy for a team leader to be convinced that a new business model or type of game they have no experience with is the right way to go. Look at what happened with Suicide Squad. According to a Bloomberg report, Warner Brothers executives traveled to London to convince Rocksteady that Suicide Squad should be a live service game.
And we all know what happened to Suicide Squad, right? Suicide Squad's single-player game is actually a pretty good game. But the game itself failed because it's a live service game that didn't need to be a live service. Killing the same guy 13 times over and over and over wasn't the best business decision. But here you go. Otherwise, the story Suicide Squad development hits several familiar notes. Warner Brothers, you know, the company that we talked about in the very first story today, how they're closing down multiverses because of WB. WB traveled to London to convince Rocksteady that Suicide Squad should be a live service game and keeping, the industry trends. Exactly. See, nobody likes going first, but when something works, everyone's like, what can we do to change this? Because this is what's working. I don't care what you got to do. You're turning this game from what it is to what we want it to be, because the people telling the people that are making the game what to do have no clue on what they're actually doing. They just look at the money. They don't look at the actual people with the game. And the people making the game probably went, well, I don't want to do that. Hence why the people that ran the company at Rocksteady left. They left because they said, no, we don't want to do this. They started their own new studio. Well, everyone else was left holding their privates in their hand, walking around going, why is no one buying our game? Because you made a shit game. You followed a trend that shouldn't have been for this game. You could have made a different game.
Keeping with prevailing industry trends. I don't know if that's what happened, but when I left WB, all of my peers in the industry, not just at Warner Brothers, were talking about live service games, microtransactions, and free-to-play. So it's possible that Rocksteady was convinced by their peers, by other leaders in the industry. When you're managing a big studio, there aren't many people that you can get advice from.
No, because you are doing it, right? Here, you know what's funny? We talk about this all the time on GXG and all the other stuff. We look at stuff and everyone's like, oh no. If you think for 1 second that these companies don't talk to each other, because who else are they going to talk to? Right? Whatever industry you're in right now, you probably have been to a convention for that. I don't care if you're selling insurance. I don't care if you're selling houses, whatever it is. You show up and you talk to other real estate guys, or you talk to other camera guys, or you talk to other YouTubers, whatever it is, and you start talking, and then they start talking, and they're like, well, I heard Ted's over in this studio, and they're making a Battle Royale game. Oh, are they? You think we should make a Battle Royale game? Oh, well, this person's working on a live service game. Why do you think all these games that are the same come out at the exact same time? It's kind of weird, isn't it?
Because very few people have experience with your problem set. So naturally, you network with other studio executives. And it turns out that group is very small, and they also can fall into the trap of trend.
So they look for other people.
Following. I'll let you in on a little secret.
A whopping 85% of gaming revenue comes from free-to-play games.
Many industry executives are not visionaries. They're followers. And this isn't just in...
Nice for you to say that, Laura. See, I like her insight, right? When I say stuff, you guys don't know if you could trust me or whatnot, because I'm just some schlub on the internet, okay? Because you don't know my backstory. You don't know where I've been. You just know me as Mike or 30 on the YouTube channel, okay? I worked in the film industry for 20 years. I have a lot of managing positions. I've worked at a lot of places, done a lot of things, okay? 46 years old, okay? I'm very driven by my own success, okay? Whatever I do, I put my 100% into it. Okay, I know my shit. You don't have to think I know my shit, which is fine. Okay, and she says that those people are followers. It's exactly right. The difference between people that are leaders and followers. Okay, so let me rewind that for a second.
Executives are not visionaries. They're followers. And this isn't just in games, it's in technology too.
It's everywhere. Everywhere. Not even just technology.
Meta sees Microsoft having success with AI, and the next thing you know, they've pivoted again. Look at the more recent news.
Yeah, Zuckerberg with the community notes. Oh, that was bad. We're bad. Twitter's doing it? Well, then we have to do it.
That they've decided to implement community notes on their platform, similar to what Elon did with X. I remember when we launched, many of the gaming executives were skeptical. They weren't bought in until Nintendo proved that you could sell consoles to grandma. And next thing...
Oh, I know I'm not a schlub. Sorry, what I'm saying is people think I'm a schlub because I'm just a guy on the internet.
You know, you've got Kinect and the Sony Move. Xbox and Meta are big companies, so of course they're going to have these challenges with trend following. But I mean, a small studio like Larian, they should be able to keep that stuff from happening in their organization. Well, it's not that simple. When their team goes to conferences like GDC or they network with their peers, they are getting advice. They are getting infused with the latest industry trends. The whole point...
That's right. When you go to these conventions, this is what it is. This is how it's supposed to be. This, right? And I'm a stubborn son of a bitch. Hence why my channel's small, and I refuse to do what everyone else does, because I know that this is where it's going to go. Okay? And I like the way I do my content. Otherwise, I would have switched. I like the content I create. I am not a follower. Right? I am far from a follower.
Of going to a conference or networking is to learn. And you want that. You want your team to grow. But you have to evaluate every new direction carefully. And this is where the executive comes in.
Yeah. At what point did you start thinking about what's next for the studio?
Before we started. So this was part of a larger plan that I have towards what I call the very big RPG that will dwarf them all.
Oh, so Baldur's Gate isn't that RPG?
No.
Wow.
No.
Right. Baldur's Gate 3 was the springboard to get to your next RPG. Right? Making Baldur's Gate 3, make it, learn from it, and then take what you learned from that to make your original game. It'd be good.
No, not at all. But it's a very long plan, complicated.
Okay, so the next game isn't that RPG either. It's another step towards it.
Yeah, I think so.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Man, I have so much respect for Larian Studios. So much respect. Okay, when my son is 40 years old, Larian Studios will be that company that we talk about like a Blizzard. You know what I mean? They'll be so big and successful at that time, and maybe he won't own it anymore, and maybe they'll go on, but that's exactly what Larian Studios is. Larian Studios is that studio that makes the game, love and passion, make a game, sell a game, and they take that money and they invest it into their next game. They don't need outsiders. They're just doing what they want to do, making good games.
An executive, you should have a long-term plan that you're building towards. At the same time, when new data comes along, you have to be ready to pivot if needed. Sven is an executive that has a clear understanding of how to make these trade-offs, and thank goodness that he's making good choices, because his studio depends on it.
Yep.
Every decision he makes has...
Yeah, when it's not your money, you're willy-nilly with stuff. When it's your money, completely different ball game.
...real meaning at Larian. The accountability is built in, whereas at these big companies, it's diffused. But it could be different if they wanted it to be. These large companies could...
I don't know if she's going to say this, but the big companies, they're foaming at the mouth to try to get Larian Studios. Foaming at the mouth to get a company like that. And they would take it over and they would destroy it. Destroy it because they would just want it for the brand, just for the name, for the IP, right? Like when you see Larian Studios on a box now, you're like, they make good games. Any studio, any massive company would take them up and be like, well, Larian made this, but it wouldn't be Larian anymore.
Start rewarding the kinds of behaviors they want to see in their game makers. They can follow the trend of listening to their...
Listen to a fan, scope the features, ship quality games. Beautiful. Exactly right.
Fans of scoping their games appropriately and shipping high-quality experiences. They can hire executives that understand these realities. In a recent interview with IGN, Tim Willits said the following about the AAA game problem. The problem isn't necessarily that AAA games take too long to develop and thus launch into already abandoned genres. Rather, Willits believes AAA developers are tending to overscope their games, which in turn means they fail to do any one thing brilliantly. For Space Marine 2, Willits explained Saber made sure to nail the core combat and kept a handle on the scope of the game. So much so that some have praised it for rekindling memories of the Xbox 360 era of action.
I think I'm going to have a blast playing Space Marines 2, right? I have nothing against Space Marines 2 for the quality of the game. I have a problem with the business model of the game that they've chose to do, and that's why I don't play Space Marines 2 right now, right? But I will own this game. I will buy this game once the game is complete, okay? Now, again, I've said this before, and I'll say it again. There's no difference between releasing a game and then waiting for the game to come out, or if it's an early access or beta, whatever it is. That's exactly what this is, right? It's a fantastic game, but it's not complete in my eyes. So as the consumer, I don't buy it right now, right? I didn't have to buy Halo Infinite when it came out 3 years ago. It was finished 3 years later.
Action games. Not only has Space Marine exceeded their sales expectations, the budget was less than half of Doom Eternal. Think about that. The cost of Space Marine 2 was half that of a game being made in 2019.
Which is fantastic.
And they still made...
So how does a game company like Saber, which I love their games, by the way. They do the SnowRunners games. They're making the Roadcraft game. Okay. How does a game company like Saber make a game for half the cost of Doom? Okay, from 2019 in 2025. Yet all these other companies tell you they have to make a game that's $300 million, which means they have to sell 7 million copies. Minimum.
Made a fantastic experience. The challenge with any large organization...
See, Space Marines 2 crosses 6 million players. Okay, yet their game, they only need to sell probably 1.5 million to 2 million copies. Very successful. So now Saber can take this money that they've made off of Space Marines 2 and reinvest it into the company to make their next game.
Organization is that it's much easier to destroy a culture than to build it.
360 set us up for being the best box for developers, the best box for core gamers, and we then flipped it around and said, this isn't a dev box, this isn't a core gaming box, this is an entertainment device.
That's because you were tone deaf. The people that were in charge at that choice were morons.
Building a great company and culture takes years, and as you scale, it's easy to lose sight of what made you great. It's easy for teams to slide into mediocrity. It takes courage and resolve to right a culture gone wrong, and that takes strong leadership, strong executives. At the end of the day, the job of a gaming executive, simply stated, is to create and maintain a successful team. And
this is why I think Phil Spencer's good at his position, because you could say Phil Spencer's not good if you don't like him, but Phil Spencer is what Xbox needed at this time, unlike what they had for management and ownership before.
By successful, I mean, it has a clear set of goals.
You have someone that's a leader that's taking a risk and doing stuff. Right?
And a process for achieving them. Making a fun game that people want to buy has to be the obvious goal of any of these game studios. And it's clear to see from the success of Larian and Saber Interactive that their leadership understands that. Like any gamer, I'm sad to see the failure of so many beloved game franchises. At the same time, I realize it's creating opportunity for new games and new leaders.
Yep. If the big ones are going to take advantage of the opportunities and fail, then the little guys that come up, like a Pal World, like a Helldiver Studio, like a Black Myth Wukong Studio, like these people rise above because they're taking the opportunity, like the NetEase with Marvel Rivals, seeing an opportunity and thriving with it instead of just doing the same old stuff.
These failures are making way for new games to step into the breach. And when they do, gamers will be there.
There you go. She's got Marvel Rivals here at the end. That's a good video as well. I like her stuff. I like the stuff that she creates as well. Give Laura a like. Description down below. Give her a subscribe.